While we're getting started here, I'd just like to acknowledge that this is a webinar put on from Nova Scotia, but we may have participants joining us from other provinces. We hope that our guidance document is helpful to you, but it's important to note that you should check your local guidelines as well and make sure that you are covering everything that way. Thank you for coming to our webinar on adaptations for U-Picks and on-farm produce sales. This webinar is brought to you by Perennia and Farm Safety Nova Scotia. We also have members of the Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture and Horticulture Nova Scotia joining us today. So just as a little bit of a background on Perennia, our service areas are very varied. We are a multifaceted company, and this webinar is coming to you from the Agriculture Field Services Division. In field services, we offer production advice, disease and pest identification and management, help addressing emerging and critical industry issues, development of workshops and other training. We do research and help producers be environmentally and economically sustainable. Our Quality and Food Safety Division, which many of you may be familiar with, help producers and processors meet their food safety goals through training and on-site assessments. Our product development team has done some really neat things with businesses in Nova Scotia, assisting them in creating new products, fine-tuning processes, and improving shelf life and more. Perennia has also started offering some lab services. We have a plant health lab that has been working with the grape industry to do virus testing and is working on expanding into small fruit and other crops. We also have a cannabis lab in Truro that provides analytical services for that industry. Over the past few years, our mandate has expanded into the fisheries sector, resulting in initiatives relating to food safety, product development, and more. Please check out our website for more information on any of our service areas. So our main speakers today, I'm happy to introduce Lori Brookhouse from Farm Safety Nova Scotia, Elaine Grant, who is a Quality and Food Safety Specialist with Perennia, and Jen Haverstock, who is the Manager of Horticulture and Berry Specialist with Perennia. We also have joining us Mike and Katerina from Compton's Berry Patch and PEI, who are going to speak to us later about their plans for the season. We also have representatives from NSDA and Hort Nova Scotia, as well as myself, Caitlin Condon, the Acting Vegetable Specialist at Perennia, and Sarah Wood, who is a horticulturalist with Perennia. So the agenda for today, we're going to start off with some resources from Farm Safety Nova Scotia. Following that, we'll launch into some best practices and cleaning and disinfection with Elaine Grant. And then we will turn to Jen Haverstock for customer communications, customer flow, direct sales. And then we will turn it over to Sarah and Matt and Katerina for a little bit of what they're planning to do this year. And we'll wrap it up with a Q&A. Just a reminder that you can ask a question at any time with the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will turn it over to Lori. Oh, you're still muted there, Lori.
There we go. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Brookhouse with Farm Safety Nova Scotia. I am the Farm Safety Advisor there, and for the last couple months, I've been working on COVID-19 resources to hopefully help you implement some best practices on the farm. So what I wanted to do today is basically go over some of those resources so that you have better knowledge of where to find them and know that you can actually use these at any time. So This is our main page for Farm Safety Nova Scotia, and it's located at farmsafetyns.ca. So right on the front page, you'll see there's a link to COVID-19. And to get to our resources, you just need to click that link. And it will load. And it opens up to a page with a little bit of information at the top. And then each of our categories are broken up into pictures, so little picture icons. And so here, underneath each of the pictures, gives you a little bit of information of what is in that section as well. So first, I just want to bring to your attention that we do have, because if you don't want to click each of these boxes to see what's inside, we have a resource guide. So inside, I'm just waiting for it to load, there is an actual PDF. So it lists all the resources here on the site, but if you click the top link, it actually opens up into a PDF. So if you prefer to download it and look at it this way, hold it in your hand and view it the screen that way, it might be a little bit more user-friendly. So again, it just lists all the resources, and anything highlighted in bold is the name of that resource that you can find on the web page. So in COVID, fact sheet is just some information about the virus itself. You know about the resource guide now. Troubleshooting, this gives you a little bit of information on how to perhaps deal with if there's an outbreak on the farm, what things to consider, your different types of operation. And then also some references to visit to help you make your decision on what to do if there is an outbreak on farm. Next, we have facility hygiene. So this deals with a lot of the different things like disinfectants, cleaning and disinfecting on the farm. But one of the key things here is a personal protective equipment supplier list. So what we've done is gone to basically across Canada, all the suppliers for masks and different types of personal protective equipment, as well as soaps, hand sanitizers, cleaners, and compiled a list of those who actually have material that they can sell to the farm. And you can either order online or by calling. All the contact information is there. Some of these will actually have a note next to it to say, like for instance, under Acklands Granger, it will say you require federal approval for the purchase order. So what that means is if you're to order masks, and then that supplier needs to go back to the federal government to approve you to purchase those masks. So there's little hints and tips there on the supplier list as well to be able to figure out where to place your order. Just waiting for it to load. There we go. Also in this section too is cleaning log, so housing cleaning log or an on-farm cleaning log. So each time that you perform a cleaning and disinfecting procedure on farm in the U-Pick roadside stand, this should be documented. So if there's question later, you can show when it was last done and how it was done. So then moving into farm safety plan supplements. Everything is broken down here into categories. Sorry. So here, hazard assessment and control. If you click on the actual hazard assessment, it will bring up a sample and actually a .doc, which means it's a form that you can edit. So I'm just going to quickly open it up here so you can see the formatting. You can change it to your own farm name and then adjust this to your particular farm operations. Fatigue management is in there as well. Emergency preparedness. So depending on how far you've gone along with your program, you might be ready for a pandemic policy and an emergency response plan. Also new, what Caitlin referred to at the beginning of the presentation is best practice. And this will be going out at the end of the presentation. She's, I believe, sending out a link plus the PDF version. So in here, it will go through, and it has an index that's clickable as well. Just an introduction to how to use this particular resource. your hazard assessment and control. And in this particular section, I'll scroll. It will actually have a link to the WorkSafe BC website, which has a specific hazard assessment sample for fruit growers. So that's a very good resource if you're looking for something a little bit more targeted to your particular operation. And then of course it goes through just specifically for UPIC and roadside stands, personal hygiene, facility hygiene, training workers, communications, parking and the customers coming on property, transportation, if there's an outbreak, and right now sample field setups for strawberries. And we're gonna evolve and update this document as we get further into the season. So anytime you see a resource like this and you can see where it says new, if we change it or update it, we'll usually post that on social media and in our e-news, but we'll also mark it as new or updated on the website. And then of course there's training resources to train your staff, information on the right to refuse work, and then if you're hiring contractors on farm, also contractor management and what to do with that population. Then if you are sick, it just goes through a quick blurb and basically references Public Health Nova Scotia and what to do if a worker is sick on the farm. Under personal hygiene, we duplicate that suppliers list. We also have a new document, the dangers of hand sanitizer. This is something we found that the hand sanitizer actually has a low flash point. So it can be a danger if on farm, it can either catch fire if it's exposed to temperatures of 21 to 24 degrees. So there's some information there for you on how to handle hand sanitizers and understanding those dangers and where to find the information for your own hand sanitizer. Also, I wanted to highlight the hand washing stations in the field. This is also a document that you can click on and open up. Oh, here we go. So here, because this may be a challenge for you, because you need to have hand washing stations strategically positioned in your operation, there's different types of hand washing stations that are available. You can get some fancy ones, but also there's quite a few resources to make your own. And so just setting up something where it has some flowing water and having soap and water on the side with disposable towels is going to do quite well. There is a link to the full PDF of these different types of hand washing stations that you see here below. So you can see from quite sophisticated to very basic. So this is a great resource to be able to build your own hand washing stations and position them where you need them on farm. Also, I've received lots of questions about masks, wearing a mask. So all that information is in here as well, including the comparison of an N95 to the KN95, which there's been lots of information. You'll find when you speak to suppliers that the KN95 is much more available than the N95s at this point. Then we also have under posters and signs. So these things you may want to adapt for your farm operations particularly. So hand washing, physical distancing, all of these are PDFs that you can click on and open up and change. So for instance, we've adapted AgSafe BC's physical distancing poster, so you can place these strategically where you need to on farm and go from there. Spanish resources. So many of the resources that we have in each of the other sections is here in Spanish, so it's broken up into their categories as well. And if I click on one, it's in Spanish, and then I no longer know what it says. So the titles are there in English for us to help with that. Transportation, this is something that's also included in the UPIC best practice for your operations specifically. But overall, if you have workers traveling from different locations for the UPIC or for actual supplier, obtaining supplies at different suppliers and coming back and forth to farm. There's some information here as well to kind of comply with our guidelines here in the province for that particular activity that we have to do on farm. So all your information is available there, including a letter that you may want to have your workers carry. So if they're not being able to maintain that physical distance in the vehicle, they're stopped, the official asks them questions, they can provide this letter to the official to let them know they're traveling for farm purposes, being an essential service. Under provincial resources, there's also a document here specifically for you. There's the release of the COVID-19 guidance for UPIP farms. So if you haven't seen this yet, this was released last week, and we have now posted it on our website. In the best practice that I've built, I've taken this particular resource and have referenced it on that best practice as well. So everything is in one location. There's a link to the Government of Nova Scotia website where all their coronavirus updates are housed each week, and as well as Nova Scotia Health Authority. This box here is one of the probably the key resources that we have, because in here is the Health and Safety Prevention Guide. What this will do is help you build your own COVID health and safety program, basically. So here, you click on the guide and you open it up. It has another index, just like we did for the best practice for the UPIC and roadside stands. And it goes through each of those same categories and very general for any particular farm in the agricultural industry. So you may find the UPIC one and farm safety plan supplements a little bit more useful, but there may be some extra information here that you would prefer, or let somebody else know who has a different operation that they can use that as well. And lastly, we have a section on maintaining mental fitness. As you've seen in some of the other resources, mental health is key, especially during this time. So just giving you some tactics to help maintain your mental fitness while you're making all of these changes and doing all of this work to get your operations up and running. There's also the 8 domains of well-being. These are great little infographics. I'll bring one up. And you can post these on farm, share them on your websites if you have them, and in social media. It just gives little reminders on basically micro skills to maintain your mental fitness during COVID-19. So that is it. So if you have any questions, please put them in your Q&A at the bottom where Caitlin was showing us. As well as I wanted to mention, if you have any farm-specific challenges, Farm Safety Nova Scotia is offering the advisory services for free for any COVID-19 challenges. So if you have something that you want to review with me, chat about, just give me a call. My information will be available at the end of this webinar. Caitlin.
Great, thank you so much, Lori. You've got tons of information there, so everybody should be able to find what they're looking for. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to turn it over to Elaine for the next section.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to my living room. No, it's funny doing this during COVID, you know. As most of the time when I see farms, I'm usually sitting around the kitchen table. So it's kind of nice to invite you guys into my home instead this time. So we're going to go over just a few best practices, and hopefully I'm seeing some of the questions come up. So I'm going to try and answer those as I go through my presentation here. Next slide, Caitlin. So we want you to continue to follow those good agricultural practices you already have in place. The whole washing your hands properly, no eating in the field, keeping hands and equipment clean. But you're going to have to change a few things that maybe increase some cleaning or change the way or what you use to clean. So, and maybe even add in some extra sanitizing steps where you're unable to get, water and soap. So just take a step back and kind of before you even have anybody in the field, and just identify those high touch surfaces and areas where 6 feet spacing would be quite difficult to maintain, and make a plan on what you're going to do to address that. So before you come up with that plan, we want to make sure that you take a look at what Farm Safety Nova Scotia has on there. They actually have a really good COVID-19 hazard assessment available that will help you walk through and identify some things maybe you hadn't thought about. Plus, if you have that documented, if you ever did need to go back, it doesn't have to be complicated. Just, write something down and come up with creative ways to make sure you're protecting your customers and your employees. Next slide, Caitlin. All right, so I'm seeing a few questions come up about face masks. So they are not mandatory in Nova Scotia. They are recommended when you can't maintain that distance of 6 feet, 2 meters. The other thing you have to keep in mind, especially when we get into the heat of the summer, is wearing them might cause some people to be at risk for heat exhaustion in those extreme temperatures. And some people kind of fiddle with the masks and they're constantly touching their face. So you just have to kind of watch that. And as you're thinking about your customers coming into the field, keep in mind that not everybody is supposed to wear a mask. Small children, it's hazardous for them. Some people can't, like asthmatics, those that are autistic, people that have hearing aids or are deaf are unable to wear a lot of options for face masks, and those with sensory issues. So just remember to encourage kindness and empathy with your employees and with your customers, and keep that in mind so everybody can kind of keep everybody safe and businesses open. So if, for example, if you have employees in the field and they can't keep that 6 feet distance, they should be wearing a mask of some sort to protect them, other people. The only ones that protect themselves are those N95 masks. Next slide, Caitlin. So as of today, and we should say this because the situation is evolving quite rapidly. As of today, June 22nd, 2020, COVID-19 is currently not known to be transferable through food. However, it can be transferred through those droplets on high touch surfaces. So we're thinking light switches, carts, that kind of thing, tractors. And it definitely is transferred through respiratory. So the best way to keep yourself safe is to keep that 6 foot distance at all times. All right, so yes, hard surface sanitation. So if you cannot get your hands on something like Lysol or any of the other commercial cleaners that would be approved for use in food facilities to get rid of COVID, you may have to use a household bleach solution to sanitize those high touch surfaces. Now, the key there being household bleach solution. So that's like a 5.25% unscented. If you're using Atlantic 12 on your farm, that runs about 10%. So you'd have to adjust the dilution a little bit on that. But it runs, you're supposed to mix it a teaspoon of household bleach to about a cup of potable water. And that contact time when you apply it has to be at least a minute. What you need to keep in mind is that disinfectant solutions will degrade. So remember to refresh that at least daily. Ideally, I would refresh it again at lunchtime kind of thing. And make sure you check the expiry dates on bleach. I didn't realize that bleach expires, but I guess that's a recommendation from the province. And if it's open longer than 6 months, it will degrade and not be near as effective. And as you're spreading this bleach around, some of these cleaners and disinfectants aren't good for metal surfaces, so just use that with caution. So, and keep in mind, especially if you're being audited, you got to make sure all these chemicals you're using are approved for use in food facilities for your certification, but you should be anyways, just to keep everybody safe. The other thing is that hard surface disinfectant parts per million there of 1,000. It's not the same as your no rinse solutions of 200 parts per million you're used to using. So if you're using that on a food's contact surface, you're going to need to rinse that off after a minute. And you should be labeling the containers and remembering to keep like health and safety through all this. Now, the other thing to think about is, and I know there was a question that came up about reusable containers. If you have commercial pickers picking into reusable containers where they're emptying it out and coming back, if it's the only bucket they are using, you're fine. Just clean those at the end of the day. Soap and water, and then sanitize, because you can't, even with hands, you can't sanitize anything dirty. You have to make sure that everything's clean first and then apply the sanitizer, or else it won't be effective. But if it's like a wooden tray, you're picking into a wooden tray, you're setting it on, you know, the risk is fairly low for that contact. I would encourage hand washing over everything else. And, you know, if you're picking into trays and putting them on a cart, chances are nobody's touching those again for a day or so anyway. So, yeah. All right, next slide, Caitlin. So hand washing. So it gets interesting when you're in the field and you don't have running water. So there are some really good examples on the Federation of Agriculture's Farm Safety website of some really neat hand washing stations that are out there that you can make. If they're not hands-free with the tap, just remember to instruct people to shut the tap off after with a paper towel so they're not touching the dirty tap with their clean hands and kind of possibly recontaminating their hands. Make sure potable water is used. And hand washing with soap and water is always the best option. If that's not available, to apply sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol to your hands and let it dry. And keep in mind the whole thing, the flash point. You have to make sure like their hands are totally dry before they, you know, go off and play with anything that could potentially spark a fire. So with Canada Gap, I did check the requirements on their website, and they have a really good COVID section as well on their website. They do state that they're allowing the hand wipes and sanitizer to continue to be used whenever water and soap isn't available. So that's kind of good for you guys to know as well. So I would train your employees as well as any customers that they need to wash their hands whenever they leave the washroom, cough or sneeze, and touching anything food related. So remember to do that training again this year with your employees, but you might have to up it a little bit because hand washing frequently and sanitizing frequently they may have to do it more often whenever they're interacting with the public than they probably did before. All right, next slide there, Caitlin. All right, so this is, there's a couple links here to make sure you're using the proper disinfectant that's rated for COVID-19. So Caitlin, if you want to click on one of those links and bring it up. All right, so there's actually, if you go up to, they have some tips down below there too about hand hygiene and sanitizers, but if you go up to the top there, it says list of disinfectants for COVID-19. And scroll down there, Caitlin. Keep scrolling. All right, so you'll see something there that says filter items. You can actually type in whatever cleaner you happen to have on hand and see if it's effective against COVID-19. So I think Clorox is on there, Caitlin, if you want to type in Clorox. Yeah, so it would tell you, yes, that would be, there's a hydrogen peroxide cleaner disinfectant that actually is effective against COVID-19. So those are all approved. There's wipes, there's Lysol wipes on there. But keep in mind, Lysol wipes shouldn't be used on hands without rinsing off in between. And same with food equipment, because they're not approved for use on food equipment. And then there's another, if you want to scroll up there, Caitlin, just to look up the hand sanitizers. So there's a lot of local companies that are making hand sanitizers, but only a few have gone through the approval process. So if you type in I guess you can type in Barreling Tides if you want, or Raging Crow. Yeah, Raging Crow, who are located in Colchester County. Their product is registered with Health Canada for being an effective sanitizer. So some of the other local distilleries that are approved and listed on this website are Raging Crow, they're in Colchester County, Compass Distillers in Halifax, Ironworks Distillery in Lunenburg, Steinhardt in Antigonish, Barreling Tides in Port Williams, and Stillfire Distilleries down in Annapolis Royal. So if you're having a hard time finding Purell or any of the other sanitizers, these folks have some local options that you can give a try and get fairly easily. All right, I think that's it for me, Caitlin.
Great, thank you, Elaine. We will turn it over to Jen now.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. And thank you, Lori and Elaine, for getting us kicked off there. I'm gonna turn on my video. Okay, so I'm just gonna lead us through some kind of communicating with your customers, which I'm sure most of you have started to do. So just remember that what we're recommending today are based on best practices, and we understand and definitely appreciate that every farm is different and it's not one size fits all for what we're recommending. So as Lori has mentioned as well, I just wanted to state this before I get started, that for individual plans, you can contact one of us to kind of ask questions or walk you through if it's more specific. But I do see a few questions coming in already, so I'll try to answer those as I go here. So Caitlin, next slide. So how do you get the message out? A lot of you that I see are attending today are already doing some of this. Facebook, Instagram, your websites, making sure that before the season starts and before the first customer even sets foot on your farm, that you've had a chance to communicate with them about your plan and the expectations for the season. Make sure they know exactly what you expect when they show up on the farm so that it's not a surprise. If possible, post your guidelines beforehand. Maybe come up with a phone message so that when they call the farm, it reflects what your expectations are. I'm thinking about people driving from the city down to the valley and they show up and they needed to book a time. Then those are the type of things that you don't want to have happen. Standardized email response, auto responses that what your expectations are. Of course, good signage at your location. But one thing, as I just mentioned, may be a good idea, and I've heard of some producers doing this, is suggested pre-booking time slots, which can be a lot of effort, but again, it saves people from driving and then not being able to access the farm because it's already full with pickers. Next slide, Caitlin. So this is just an example of what one of the nursery greenhouses has already done, Lowland Gardens. Then they have a great Facebook presence and have posted actually before their season started a video and their guidelines and expectations that they expect their consumers to follow when they're on farm or at their location. So actually we just have a little snippet of their video that Caitlin's going to share with us.
This is your first look at a walkthrough of retail for Lowland Gardens. I'm starting the video off outside, so you can see we're in the parking lot, and we have the first thing you'll notice is the store is divvied up into the entrance and the exit lane. So if we walk up to the main doors, you'll see some of our beautiful pansy packs set up outside. Once you get to the front door, you'll notice our sign with the rules and regulations and respectful behavior for hi, Ardith. I see some of the comments popping up, so thank you already, guys. Anyway, when you arrive at the store, you'll see the sign with some of our practices and our requests. There will be a hand pump station here with locally made hand sanitizer by my sister. Shout out to Homestead Lavender. And it is a lovely lavender scented hand sanitizer that won't destroy and crack up your hands. So when you walk into the store, after you've sanitized your hands, you can grab a pre-cleaned cart, and you will be instructed to follow the arrows marked on the floor. So it's going to be a little bit of a maze. You'll get to go behind the scenes, what's normally our work area. Hopefully all clearly marked. And soon we will get back into familiar territory. So, now this is the view that people will be more familiar with. You can choose at this point to go left, right, or straight ahead.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. And you can progress the slide there. So we just wanted to show that video of something that's very simple, walking through with your phone to show people what you expect. That particular video from Lowland Gardens is actually 9 minutes long, but I feel like you can accomplish something pretty great in probably just a minute or two. So again, this is not insurmountable. It just takes a little bit of pre-planning. So in the next slide here, you can see at the entrance of the farm, here's some recommendations from a UPIC in the States. They have painted signs, again, very basic, do-it-yourself, showing what your expectations are, what the guidelines are, what your pricing is. And then again, just saying that they would recommend that you use face coverings, but they're not necessary, and that there's no group gatherings you pick with your household, all the things that we also are seeing in our guidelines, in our guidance document for Nova Scotia. And make sure that you have a designated staff person around this particular spot on your farm to help answer people's questions and direct them. And it really adds, I think, takes away a lot of the mystery for people and makes them feel a lot more comfortable when they go on your farm. You can progress the slide, Caitlin. Another good example of kind of a DIY signs, keeping your 2 meter 6 foot distance, no eating in the farmer's market, and just really clearly laid out at the entrance. When people get to your farm, you really do need to communicate with them, and even before they get there, the expectation of respectful behavior, both from you and from your clients. Of course, first and foremost, if you are sick, stay home, and that should be for both clients and employees. Discourage lingering, and I do recognize that this is something very hard because it's something that when people go to the market and go to UPICs, it's because they're looking for an experience, and unfortunately this year that might just not be what they're getting. It is about getting product. So again, no eating in the field, staying 6 feet apart, no smoking, no animals, no touching your face. Families need to stay together, and encourage as few people as possible from a family to attend. So it's kind of the same things that you would follow going to the grocery store, is that they're really trying to encourage people not to go in big groups, and to try and keep in this scenario. And I know, as I have a toddler, he will not be going with me to any of these locations because I would have to literally tie him to my body to make sure that he stayed in our row and stayed with me. So unfortunately, those are just some communications that you have to have with your customers and clients, and be prepared to answer their questions, that if they cannot keep their families together, then it might be better that they just designate 1 or 2 people to go alone. Next slide. So as we are talking about customer flow, you can just keep going there, Caitlin. I know there's been a lot of questions about the number of employees people are going to need, and this is so really farm specific. How many you're going to need, it depends on the size of your farm entirely. But it is more important than ever, I can't stress this enough, that you have cross training to ensure that there's no interruptions in your farm business. We're just saying this because truly, if someone does get sick on your farm, then and has to be off work for 2 weeks or however long, then it's important that you have people that are trained to do those particular roles and fill in. This nice lady in the video here, or in the picture, is showing us a picture of informing customers of the farm practices at the entrance. And then you have to make sure that you have a sign in and sign out log at your parking lot or the farm interface where people are coming in and out. And that can be filled out by the employee as people come up, to include their phone numbers, the number of the people in their group, and their name. And then a field employee has to monitor, have someone kind of in the field, or it's recommended that someone's monitoring the physical distancing and is there to provide new containers or kind of advise people as needed when they're in the field, so that you don't have people, that your customers, running around trying to do those things. Go ahead, Caitlin. All right, and getting to the field is another big thing, because I know that several of you either use hay wagons or buses to move people from your main parking lot. It isn't that you cannot do those things, but you do have to still maintain physical distancing. And so you may, depending on what type of vehicle you're using, limit the number of people that are going. So if it's a side-by-side, then maybe you only take the one person that's unable to make the trek to the field, and the other people walk. That it only includes one family or one group at a time. If you can maintain the 6-foot distance on wagon rides, then you could take a few different groups, but you have to make sure that you're providing hand sanitizer and sanitize the rails between the trips. But really, some of the best practices is just to determine and figure out and pre-establish a designated parking area that has signage, and encourage people to walk from the parking lot to the field, so that you don't have to go through this extra step of transporting them and figuring out how to make sure that all your surfaces have been cleaned. And then maybe just having another accessible parking area closer to the field if your primary one is at too far of a distance. Next slide, Caitlin. In the field, just as important as before they get there, then you need to have hand washing stations for your customers, or you should, I should say, have hand washing stations for your customers. And there's a few diagrams there of some pretty straightforward do-it-yourself hand washing stations, which just a bucket and a jug of water and some soap. I was pretty impressed with the one that has a roll of paper towel tied to the top. So I put the link there because it is really very straightforward. Again, groups have to stay together and make sure that these signs are posted when people get into the fields. No loitering, and you see on the right side of the screen there, there's a picture of the Hubbard's Market, and those are the types of spaces that it's just hard to have people sitting at, because you can't guarantee physical distance, or that the table has been sanitized between groups sitting there. When they're entering the field, then provide customers with a flag or a marker, so that when they get to are done in their designated picking area, you have a way of making sure that the next group that goes in goes beyond that point, or knows where they can start and stop. And the next customer will start picking from that flag, and then at the flag stay in the field until the end of the day. And at the end of the day, you can remove the flags from the field and sanitize them for reuse. Now, the easiest thing to do, because it's not easy to sanitize flags, is to actually have a few different sets of flags on the go. And so if you actually put the flags aside for a period of time, and maybe, I believe, Elaine, you'd quoted at one point, maybe three days, then that was the rotation that the flags needed to go back into the field again. Next slide. So probably the most important thing you can do is pre-planning. And so I just have a few diagrams here that were actually developed by Cornell University of different field layouts. So if you really have to sit down and look at your individual farm and predetermine what your picking plan may look like. Where do people start? How long are they allowed to be in the field? Make sure that you're considering that you have a separate start and end point to make sure that you have single direction traffic. Ensure pickers are spaced out in the field, and I believe there had been a question about asking about this. So if you progress to the next field there, Caitlin, or next slide, thank you. Then in this particular one is kind of meant to be a common looking strawberry field. So you can have clients entering or customers from either end of the field, making their way towards the center walkway or row, and they exit only in one direction. So you're never having people coming face to face, and then they can depart into the parking lot. It's important then also to make sure that you are telling people what row they're picking in, obviously, and you'll note that the arrows are having them only picking in every second row. And so you may decide that the first part of the day for the first hour or 2 hours, then everyone's picking in every odd row, and then the next 2 hours everyone's picking in every even row, because they obviously need to be still picked every day. And then again, just the next day kind of doing the same thing, and make sure that you have your rows and clearly numbered. All right, next slide, Caitlin. So in some of the larger crops, thinking about bushes, trees, trellised vegetables, where your in-row spacing is actually quite a bit wider, and you have a physical barrier, such as a bush or a tree in between rows, then you don't actually have to have people skipping rows. So you can have them picking from one side of a row, and that way they're still keeping at a fair distance from each other, and potentially having a passing lane. So you still may have enough space, or tell them how they can weave in a note to avoid other people. Okay, next slide. Now the picking and paying piece, for several people, then they allow people or their customers to bring their own containers. This is difficult because you're not sure if they've sanitized them or not, so it's strongly suggested that there's no bring your own containers. They pick into the containers provided by the farm, and even better, than they're picking directly into the boxes or containers that they're going to take home with them, so that you don't have to worry about sanitizing those containers that they've used. Instead of going by weight, then maybe the suggestion for this year is that you do a unit price. So if everyone's picking into a box or a bag or a basket, then you set that up front, as opposed to it being by weight, so that you're limiting the handling. Pay by card or exact change. It's similar, again, I think most people are recommending this not really to deal with cash, but that's hard in these situations. So make sure you're dealing with round numbers maybe, or always having 250 or something of that nature, so that you can get an even 5. And if necessary, designate one employee to weigh produce and another to process the payment, and then just make sure that they're washing or sanitizing their hands between transactions. Next slide. So alternative ways to sell if you're not picking, and maybe it's that this year you decided pick is not for you because it's too complicated, or that you would prefer to not have people on your farm. Some options, obviously farmers markets, and for people who do not usually sell through the provincial farmers markets, then there is a Facebook group called Market Vendor Connect, which allows you to post when you have product, and farmers markets can actually ask if or post that they're seeking product. So that's one way to market. Provide custom picking for farm pickup. So someone would call and put an order in with you for 2 flats, and you tell them a time, and then they would just come and pick it up. You can also do just farm stands. So just decide that you're only going to do your roadside stand this year. look at your local CSAs and see if they have room or are interested in taking your product. Food hubs, Cape Breton has a food hub. There's a Station Food Hub, which does processing, just based outside of Windsor. And maybe just determine if you can do online sales. And this is just for those of you who haven't seen it already, then Perennia has actually launched a pilot program that can assist registered farms or food and beverage companies in getting into or enhancing their online presence for direct to consumer sales. And the pilot project program is for Nova Scotia based agriculture businesses who want to quickly, and this is meant to help people this season, conveniently and get a professional website created with their product listings and do e-commerce features and add an online store. So the program will cover 6 months of service with Local Line, which is the development program. And from the date that you sign on, and it's completed, you have to sign on before March 1st, 2021. So there is still time. And for more information, then you can check out our website there. Okay, next slide, Caitlin. So if you have decided to go the farm stand route or in-person pickups, then this nice diagram is of a fish truck in Truro where they have people lined up, and I think they have marks on the ground there. So it can be pretty as simple as something like this. You could have your own farm stand but you have to ensure, if you have someone staffing it, that you have PPE for your staff and ensure that both your customers and your employees are able to properly social distance. If they're not, similar to the grocery store, then you should have barriers up or look at having barriers. Hand sanitizer for your customers and staff if they are going into your building, and markings for 6-foot distances at the cash. Again, the sign and communication with your customers is really the biggest thing that you can do to help them understand what your expectations are of them when they're in your store or on your farm. And then posting the number of customers allowed at one time. And I'm sure that we've all been in locations since this has started where they have a sign on the door that says a maximum of 3 customers. I think it was Lowland Gardens, and I've seen this a few other places, that stores are actually putting out a designated number of carts. So they may only have 5 carts or baskets, and that's how many customers are allowed in the store at that time. So there's a lot of examples out there already. It just has to be, you have to think about what will work on your farm. And the next slide. As I'd mentioned earlier, and it's when you're doing the UPIC, it's the same with your farm stands to encourage exact change, debit, credit transactions, e-transfers, even if you're comfortable doing that. Having people wait in the car until the roadside stand is clear, so you may only have room to have a few people standing there, so you might just have a sign that tells people to wait in their car until there's no one at your stand. Having a window or drive-through ordering, which we have a fun little video here to show in a second. But before we show that, then I'll just say pre-orders with time slots, as I mentioned previously, or designated drive-up spots, which we'll show some examples of as well. Okay, so the video, in essence, is showing these people who actually did a drive-through farmers market. So they have 2 lines of traffic that they can use, and they go up to the window, someone greets them, and they have a list of what's available that day. And the handy thing, which I wanted to be able to show, is that he had maybe a meter stick with a bucket on the end, and that's how people were able to give him the cash. So there is a lot of very simple, inventive ways to manage this and amend what you need to do to try and make it work for your clients and for your firm. Okay, next slide, Caitlin. And here's just an example of what some of the provincial farmers markets have already done. The Truro Farmers Market have numbered parking spaces, so you would call when you get there, let them know what space you're in, your name, and they would bring your order. They do have a designated time that you arrive, either that you've predetermined based on for them it's based on your last name, but for your clients it may just be that you have time slots and they pick what time is convenient for them. Contact delivery. So most of the time, then similar if you're going to the superstore for your pickup, then it's contactless in that you open the trunk, they throw everything in the trunk and close it, and you don't have to interact with them more than that. And this does work well with a prepaid system such as e-transfer or credit card, which may be options if you have an online store already. Next slide. Oh, excellent. So that is the end of what I was going to cover today, but I'm sure I see lots of questions popping up that hopefully we can address. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah and our farmer speakers today, joining us from Compton's Veggie Stand.
Thank you, Jen.
Just before I start a little Q&A with Matt and Katharina, I just wanted to introduce the two speakers. Together they operate Compton's Very Berry Patch Vegetable Stand in Summerside, PEI. And some of us were fortunate enough to hear Matt's piece on CBC News the other day about changes he's looking to implement on farm to accommodate the public looking to U-pick his operations. And we as extension specialists thought it would be best for the masses to hear directly from one of your own, if you will. Just wanted to give a little background. Katharina Mueller's position with Compton's Vegetable Stand is as the operations manager for the farm. And this position entails her looking after the retail side of the business. Her daily duties include the management of staff, store management, organization of U-pick operations, social media, website, and online store management. Katharina is an entrepreneur by heart, and she says she loves a challenge and thrives on solving problematic situations. This would be a doozy for her, I imagine. 20 years ago, she would never imagine living on a farm, and this experience has been life-changing. And as for Matt, who's born and raised on his farm in Summerside, took over the farming operations in 2012 and purchased the farm from his parents in 2015. Compton's Vegetable Stand, as it's known, has been a staple in the community since 1957. The farm started growing strawberries in approximately 2005, and they have about 20 acres of strawberries in production that supplies their own retail store and about 20 wholesale customers. They are also the only U-pick farm in Summerside, opening their farm to the public every season. They also own a U-pick only field in a neighboring community to help meet the mass demand for U-pick in that area. And I just want to welcome you both to our webinar. Nice to have you. Thank you very much for being here today and being available to our producers here in Nova Scotia, Matt and Katharina. When do you foresee your strawberry U-pick opening, Matt?
We're typically about 2 weeks behind Nova Scotia. So if you guys are starting kind of the end of June, we're typically 2 weeks after that. So our primary goal with our strawberry farm is our picked product. That's our biggest demand.
Yes.
And as our fields get overabundance with strawberries, we will open our U-pick then. So it's usually about the middle of July when we're in full operation with the U-pick.
Okay. Just wondering if you might share with us the measures that you've already started to plan for, or just some of the brainstorming between the two of you that you've come up with for your operation.
I'm going to switch that one over to Katharina because that's her.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I was actually really impressed with your guys' presentation because I've been sitting here going, oh my God, how am I going to make this work without like a network of people to kind of brainstorm with? So myself, I've gone on multiple American websites. I found a lot of information there, like those diagrams from the university that you showed in your presentation. So that was kind of helpful for me. So basically I've gone ahead and I've ordered a lot of signage because I feel that that is going to be the best way for us to communicate with our customers coming into the field, because you can't repeat the dialogue to every single customer. You just have to make sure that they're reading the information that you've posted, because it would take forever for each customer to for you to communicate that verbally with each customer. So I've gone ahead and like for us, we're only going to be able to have like 30 different groups in the field at a time. And so I've ordered numbers like 1 through 30 to mark the rows that will be available for the people who book appointments through an online booking calendar, which I just created. I haven't sent the links live yet, but those will go live when we have an exact date that we're going to start. So it's a free calendar through Google that you can set events through. And then you just kind of create how many people are allowed to book. So we're doing 30 at a time, and they can book an hour spots per family. I've also have our COVID-19 guidelines. So we have two separate signs. We have our UPIC rules, and then we have COVID guideline rules. And then I've also ordered like social distancing signs, like obviously enter and exit only signs, so people know where to enter and where to exit. Also a lot of no smoking signs. We just had issues with that last year. So that's something that I definitely want to make sure that people realize that you can't smoke in our fields. At one point, we didn't think we were going to be able to open. So, you know, for us having the go ahead that we're going to be able to have people in our fields this year has been fantastic. But I made the executive decision probably a week ago that we wouldn't be allowing people to bring their own dishes into the fields this year, just because we don't know if they're sanitizing them at home or not. So we've just kind of put together the package that our customers will receive when they check in. So we'll have someone checking each individual reservation in at the bottom of the field. It'll be clearly marked where they park. Basically, then there'll be another employee to show them to their row, but we will give them the products to pick in. They can use that product for the whole duration of that hour. They can get that weighed. We'll mark down
Katharina,
Yeah.
what can you provide for us what you're using to pick in? What are you choosing?
We're just,
I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a crate.
It's waxed.
Have the individual boxes inside.
Love it. Okay.
it's just the actual, and every strawberry grower that's watching this now, they're going to realize it's just the 8-quart flats and the wooden quart boxes. And we're charging $3 for this product, because it's, you know, if we get there's definitely an associated cost, as everyone knows, towards these products, and you know, we're absorbing enough of the cost of all the signage and things like that and extra staff. So we think it's very key that we do charge for this product. We're charging it basically at our cost. I don't think we're making any money on it. It's just it's one thing that we think is pretty essential for this.
You just highlighted something else there. I know I cut you off, Katharina. You were on a good.
I was on a roll. It's all good.
I'm just curious for those listening as well. What have you guys taken into consideration for increasing your staff? Like from last year to this year, how many more are you going to be having on board?
That's a really good question. So I've been playing different scenarios out in my mind. Like we can operate our UPICs generally with like 3 staff on a normal day. Opening day is always busier, so I'd have probably 10. But I'm looking at having at least 10 people per day to manage our UPICs here, for at least for the first 2 weeks. I mean, I'm gonna have to evaluate it every day, every week. So it's something that's going to be continuous, I guess. But right now I'm starting out with 10 people.
I think a lot of that depends on how well people follow the rules, and on how many staff we need. And we've made it very clear throughout this is that, you know, we're obliged to do our part to make this work. And I think I said that in my interview also. But there's also the public's responsibility to play by the rules, and you know, we can only do so much. We can only provide so much, and it's up to the public to you know, to do their part also. So that's a big thing to this also.
Awesome. Yep, I agree. So you've talked about extra things, the signage you've brought on board. I'm just curious, hand washing and or sanitizer. What do you plan on using on your operation?
I think we're just going to put a big mixture in the sprayer and spray everyone off. That's the farmer response.
I think there's quite a few farmers here that probably go for that for you and agree.
Well, you know, we got to maximize efficiency here and use the cooking we have on the farm. No, it's we have some ideas, and Katharina will go into that more.
I've purchased a great deal of hand sanitizer that will be offered to our customers. They'll be encouraged to bring their own as well. So if they have their own, they can use that. Obviously, they don't have to use ours. Here on PEI, we don't have, I don't think you seem to have a lot more detail on what's expected of you. I think we have to present this to the province. There's no actual guidelines for us. So we're just trying to follow what grocery stores are doing, I guess. So we will provide hand washing stations too. We do have a call in to like Island Septic here. They provide our outhouses for our field. So they do have hand washing stations. So affordability, if we can afford to put those in, we will. But I do like the other information that you provided about making our own. That might actually happen too. So, but my plan before today was just to go with renting some hand washing stations and offering that, just like Sobeys does that here, and all the other big grocery stores do as well.
Right on. What would you say has been your biggest obstacle or challenge going into this season with COVID? Is it a plan? Is it something planning structurally? What is it?
If we're talking UPIC, it's to because these IDs, these changes may change tomorrow, depending on restrictions, and we're we're over a month away here yet before we're doing this, and what is concrete in plan today and concrete in stone what we're going to do today may change for tomorrow. So it's hard to pardon me?
It's about being adaptable.
Adaptable, yeah. And as far as our COVID rule signs, we just discussed today that we're not going to print those off from the sign maker until probably a couple of days before this all starts, because we don't know what's going to be tomorrow, let alone a month down the road. If we don't talk the whole operations, it's staffing, and we do hire temporary foreign workers here. They're scheduled to arrive on the 20th of June and isolate for their 14 days, but we're having trouble with all of our guys that aren't here yet to get work visas. So that's a big concern, where I lose sleep at night is with that, and hoping that these guys are going to be able to get what they need in Mexico. So yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Workforce is huge.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't. You have nothing unless you have workforce. You can have we can have our 20 acres of strawberries, and all the demand and all the people that want them. But unless we have the workforce behind it, it's you may as well have 2 acres. I
was going to say, if the UPIC, if for some reason, I think everyone here is hoping that people will come. You open the UPIC and they will come. What's your plan if the UPIC numbers aren't what you expect them to be? I guess you have that backup. Hopefully we'll have that backup workforce to do like a fresh pick or fresh market pick.
Oh, the first week that we open our fields, we don't open them to the public. We sell strictly just from our market stand to the public. Okay. And we've never had a situation in the past where we can't pick them fast enough, because we are the only provider basically on the west end of the island. Like, everybody comes here for their berries. I don't think, like, the amount of messages that I've been getting through social media, because I've been very active on social media, I don't feel that we're not going to have the people coming for UPIC. Our biggest concern is getting them to listen to the guidelines. That's my biggest concern, is people following the rules, because it's outdoors, that they don't know what those rules might apply to them being outside versus inside.
Yes. I happened to notice a question that was asked from behind the scenes, and I'm just going to flip it to you guys too, just to hear from, boots on the ground people. What about customers with reduced mobility wanting to come to your UPIC operation?
Our fields, you can drive pretty much right up to the row, the way that Matt has sectioned them off. So for people with mobility issues, obviously we're gonna take each situation and deal with it individually. But the type of service that we would normally give, like just putting them in our gate or something and taking them, like, that's something that we will communicate to. Like, if you're having mobility issues, it might not be something that you're going to be able to do this year. Like, you might have to really think about asking someone else, or just purchasing them ahead of time or from our market stand, right? Like, there's different options, but picking might not be an option for people with mobility issues this year.
Excellent. I have a last question here for you two. What has been your best idea generated for the UPIC during this COVID season of change and innovation? Like, what's something that you can say that, is probably been your best idea that's come upon you?
I think if this works out, I think our online booking, I think is,
We didn't even talk about that yet.
yeah, and I guess we haven't really talked about our online booking, but
Yeah,
with-
feel free, please share.
yeah, like we basically we're only allowing right now to manage our numbers in our field. You have to book online. You have to use the online app to do this. And I think if this works out, I think long term this is something that we're never going to move away from. We'll be able to increase our numbers, but the rush that we get with us being, strawberries is one commodity in Prince Edward Island that there's not enough of, and we need more growers. And it's great that we can sell all our product, but it leaves a big stress on our shoulders for the first opening week because it is so busy, because we get so many people wanting to pick. I think if this online tool and this online booking works well, that we can be able to say we have room for 50 people. You book a spot online, you show up at the field at 8 o'clock when your time is, and everyone gets a row, everyone gets a time to pick. And it'll help us staff better. Yeah, it'll help us manage. We know what's coming in. We know what we have, product for, and we can move on from there. So I think that's our biggest asset. What is going to work for us.
So, Katharina, you guys mentioned that was a free Google product?
Yep.
Can you share that? Because that is a question being asked here over and over again. What is that?
Okay. Yeah, I'll spell it out for you guys. CALENDLY.com. It's events. It's through Google. So you just basically create a profile, and it's very easy to set up. So we have 2 fields, like Matt mentioned in his bio. So I have basically 2 events, one for each field. You click on it, you create like the event name. I don't know if you can see my screen. They can't really see it.
Probably not.
No. So you create the event name, and then you just put in your description, your location, like I've put a lot of detail in there, what our rules and everything are. It creates a link, and then your max people that you want in the field at a time, how long the session is for, and then basically it notifies me and it notifies the customer. And if the customer wants to cancel, then they just cancel their appointment, and then it opens it up for somebody else to come.
Okay, so one last time, can you spell that for us again? Just slow it down, and we'll we'll have it typed out here.
CALENDLY.com.
So it starts with a C, like candy.
Yeah.
So Calend with an LY. Okay, we got it. Perfect. Awesome. That's a great share.
It's really simple to use. Whenever we first started this out,
Said the farmer.
Yeah, she sent me a link to it. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I followed it, and I booked a spot in the tractor while I was planting corn, I think, that day. And it's simple to use. It doesn't ask the end user for a whole lot of information, which I think is really great. We're not asking for email addresses. We're not asking for personal information. All we need is your name, your phone number, and what time you're wanting to book. And
Yes.
That's the beauty of this. It's not complicated, because I think, when I say what our best asset about this is, it's also our worst asset in a way too, for our senior population that isn't as tech friendly.
Mm-hmm.
COVID, let's be honest, COVID-19 is a very tech savvy virus, whereas the fact that if you're technologically a technological person where you can use a smartphone and you can use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those social media apps, you can survive a heck of a lot better with COVID-19 than a senior that doesn't even know how to use a smartphone. And we have a very huge senior following. I mean, what are our seniors now are the people that built our business back whenever we first started this business. And we have a responsibility to be able to cater to them people too. And so that's our biggest, and people are still going to be able to phone our business and book a time. And we'll just do this through the Calendly Pro app ourselves. So our seniors will still be able to book a spot. But that's going to be our biggest challenge. People that just automatically showed up to our field at 8 o'clock when we opened, and that you're going to have to unfortunately say, unless you have a time booked right now, we have to turn you away.
So Matt, that was a question that was just asked. What will you do about your older customers that don't use the internet? So you will be answering the phones, and you will personally input and give them a picking time.
So also I've limited it to 30 and 20 depending on field, but I've also allowed myself room for the people that come without appointments.
Okay.
So the senior population, I've kind of like allowed for that to happen, that we'd still have room for them. But when they come to the field, tell them next time they want to come, they just basically will have to call us first and book a time, and we'll let them know what time they can come.
So I'm hearing a whole lot of flexibility, and you guys are understanding that these people have helped you build your business. So a little bit of empathy, a little bit of kindness is going to go a long way.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's there's no, like we said, there's no book on this. I can't go to the library at the farm here and pull out the how to deal with COVID-19, and that's with all of us right now. We're learning day by day, hour by hour, how this goes.
Yep.
And what we do on our first day, I can guarantee that it's going to be different on our last day, because it's a lot of, there's going to be changes no matter what.
The season of change. Yep. Another question here for you guys. I have someone asking, not a strawberry producer, so they're wondering who's the supplier for those corrugated boxes, or the flat boxes that you just showed?
Maritime Paper or Master Packaging, either one has the printout for those boxes.
Okay, perfect.
They're a standard box that I think all the strawberry growers use in the Maritimes. So yeah.
Okay. And then another question coming in here is just curious, what are your plans for someone that is not listening, not
You want the comedic answer? You want the serious answer for that, or the comedic answer for that right now?
The politically correct answer, or like, anyway, yeah.
I can put them on the gator and drive them out really fast.
So you can just turn that back to me. I have been working out in the public through the entire pandemic. I volunteered my time with one of a local business that we partner with that sells a lot of our produce. So I've learned a lot of really key ways to deal with difficult customers. They don't tend to be difficult for very long as you can explain your position to them. Okay. And take them aside, and say like, well, I'm sorry, but like and you go through the rules. And I think they just like to push, but when you're able to stand your ground and just explain things to them and say, well, listen, either you follow the rules that are set here, or I'm sorry, we have the right to refuse service. They come down a bit, right? Like people at the beginning of the pandemic were very, like they didn't want to have to wait for anything, right? But we've learned that it's hurry up and wait wherever you go, because you're in lines. It's just part of our society right now. So our plan is like, number one thing is to try to disarm the disagreement or the misunderstanding and re-explain these to our customers. But if the customer just refuses to follow rules, they will be asked to leave, because businesses get reported here on a daily basis for not following guidelines. And that's not something that we want to have happen here, because financially and our reputation could be ruined by that, right? Like, we're really being looked at on how well we deal with this pandemic. It doesn't matter what we've done in years past. People that are uncomfortable and want you to follow the rules, they are hyper-focused on you doing the best job you can. So I
think your business will succeed more by you being over stringent than under stringent. Because people talk about how well you're doing, and you get way better publicity than the people saying that, oh, we went to Compton's U-Pick and it was just, there's no rules. Everybody was everywhere. So, it's like they don't care. People are going to, because there's more people concerned about this than there isn't. And people are going to respect and follow you better by you following the rules and being, I'm going to say, a little overprotective than underprotective, and just flying by the seat of your drawers.
Yep. Another question. I'm just throwing it out there to you guys. How can we raise our prices enough to absorb the additional costs this year without losing the customer? Keeps you awake at night too.
We just talked about this while we were on mute and said, what is our prices this year? Typically we charge $2 a pound for U-Pick. And I thought that price was a little low even last year, so I think we were planning on putting our prices up a little bit anyways. Whether it goes to $2.50 a pound or $2.25 a pound, we're not sure yet. We're going to see what this all costs and how many staff we're going to need, and where.
I was going to say the Nova Scotia rule of thumb here for this this UPIC season, I'm hearing, is that they're foregoing the weigh and scale measure of price point, and I think it's going to be flat. You know, you pick one of those cardboard boxes and you assign a flat fee to it.
Yeah, I think there has been more. I think a lot of that hasn't been practiced here in Prince Edward Island anywhere. So we've always been by the pound for everywhere. I know in Ontario and Quebec and I think in Nova Scotia, anywhere else but PEI, there's a lot of places where they have a standardized dish and you pay so much for that dish, whether you put 2 berries in it or round it up, pat it down, and smash it. And so that's I think we can control. By using our dishes that we provide, I think we can eliminate a lot of people around the scale house and where we pay, and I think we can still do it fairly well and safe by doing it this way.
And we'll make sure that before, like a good 10 days before our UPIC opens, that we will communicate our price this season and just explain to our customers that, you know, basically that there's a cost to doing business. And this year we've had to increase our staff. And I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened, but people are paying more everywhere that they're going. There's going to be people that will forego and not get strawberries. But I think the general population, well, I know for a fact, I've raised my prices online in our online store, and I have thousands of dollars of pre-orders in strawberries, and people are not worried about the price so far.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
I seen strawberries at a market somewhere in Nova Scotia. There's actually some Nova Scotia strawberries around right now, and I've seen $7 a quart. So if we charge $5.50 for all season long for a quart of strawberries,
if only you could grow those strawberries faster, hey Matt.
That's right. You know, last year we were $5 a quart for strawberries all season long.
Yeah.
And I think we discussed $5.50 this year, just with everything going on and the cost and you know, if they want them, they got to pay for them. Not it's, you know, I still don't think they're gonna go unbought.
because they'll go to Sobeys and not realize they're buying strawberries from our farm, and they'll pay more. I mean, the store's going to pay us what the customer would pay us at our stand.
Yes.
So if they want to go to the store and purchase them, they're still realistically getting them from us. We have a niche market here on the island, and this year people will, they've already contacted us making sure that they're going to be buying their product from us. I don't think we'll have an issue moving our product this year. I don't know how that is for other farmers in other provinces, but for us this year, we're feeling pretty confident as long as we get our workers that we'll be able to supply the product to the customer.
I'm going to fire off one last question to you folks. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you guys sharing your insights and your personal 2 cents worth on this, because this is all new to everyone.
Absolutely.
Again, maybe I missed it, but I'm just curious. Do the bulk of the people make it into your field via their own vehicles, or do you do the hay wagon bus as well?
No, they get to drive there. They
Okay.
can bring their own vehicle. So that's a bonus for us. We don't have to transport anybody to our fields. It's drive in and drive out.
Yeah,
Okay.
our fields are right off the main road. We don't have to travel down laneways to get to our fields. One of the lucky things we have, we are actually right inside of the city. We're in within city boundaries.
Yes.
Our fields are all easily accessible. So lots of grass. And we've always built our fields. Whenever we've done our UPIC fields, we've made extra room for parking. It's always been a part of building a
Just factored in. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next. We've gone past our time, and I'm telling you, I think people will feel that this was worth it. Your expertise is so appreciated. And the next little bit here is just to end off our webinar is a Q&A, I think more broad scope. But I hope that you have together have been able to take something from our presentation and from our producers, like they will have absorbed from your guys' Q&A.
Yes, thank you. And I hope if anyone from the PEI government's watching this right now that has anything to do with this, we need what Nova Scotia is doing for our growers, not just strawberries, but for all our growers right now. We need some rules and some cleared out instructions on what we should be doing. So if there's anybody from the department watching, take good notes.
I love it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Catherine.
guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care, folks.
Bye.
Caitlin?
All right, thank you so much for that, guys. That was fantastic. It's so nice to get the view of people who are thinking it through and really really thinking about your situation and what you're going to do with all these things. So we did manage to answer a lot of people's questions going through that Q&A with our growers here. So that was fantastic. And before we jump into some other Q&A, I just want to remind everybody this presentation will be available later on, probably sometime next week. We will be posting, it will be posted on the Perennia YouTube page, and we will be sending the link out as well as the links that were used in the presentation today for your reference. So bear with me here, and I will, we will try to answer some questions. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if we do miss your question, I've saved all the questions that have been asked so far, and we will do our best to answer them today. But if we don't get them answered today, then we will we're planning to do a follow-up webinar probably later in the season. But for more pressing issues, we will do our best to get the answers out to those questions right away. Okie dokie. So we did talk a little bit about people with mobility issues and not being able to really walk into the field, whether that's transportation or really being able to move too far down the field. So I think one of the solutions here, and I think Jen, maybe you could comment on that a little more, would be to, if you have the ability to maybe even have a few boxes at a time available, like at the entrance to your farm, that might be an option for those people.
For people with mobility issues getting into the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think it's definitely about how you structure people getting in, as you mentioned, Caitlin, and maybe you reserve particular rows for those people. And if you have kind of transfer rows on the side of your field or designated rows that people can walk up, so everyone else that does not have a mobility issue is avoiding that section by walking in kind of those transportation type rows, then you don't have to have people passing each other for the people that have mobility issues that are at the front or at the head of your row. As far as the busing, it doesn't mean that you cannot use buses, but you just have to be sanitizing them if you are using any type of vehicle. And I don't know if Lori or Elaine, you want to chime in on that piece either. I'll leave it.
And still socially distancing as much as possible with those, like with a wagon or with a bus as much as possible. It may mean more trips, but.
Exactly. And I don't know if you can specify that they have a mask, or, I mean, you really cannot tell someone to wear a mask. So you would have to just go with the 6-foot social distancing. Elaine, maybe I saw you unmute yourself there.
Yeah, I think some of it is probably farm specific too. So if we can't, every farm is different. They may all grow similar things, but every farm is different. So don't be afraid to send us an email afterwards. And even pictures are great, and or we can answer it over the phone or video chat, whatever you want to do, and we'll help you problem solve through the situation, because not everything is going to work for everybody. But you do have to sanitize those high touch surfaces. So if there's a way around having the public touching things, even pens, like just everything, if you can find a way around that, that's the way to go. And if you can't, then you're going to have to sanitized. But if you have rows that are closer that people with mobility issues can use, then that might be a way around it, yeah.
There is a general guideline in that best practice that's coming out after the webinar as well. So you just take a look at that guideline and see if you can make it fit. And if you can't, just like Elaine said, call one of us and we'll see if we can walk you through it and see what can be put in place otherwise.
Great. Okay, we have another question here about how often customers can go into the same row. This is specifically talking about high bush blueberries. Elaine, maybe you want to comment on that. I know that they haven't had, there's no evidence of COVID-19 being transferred via food.
No, there isn't actually right now, which is great. Is this the question? Which question was it again? I'm just reading them down.
Well, referring to high bush blueberries, and it says our rows hold a lot of customers. Some pick 1 or less than 1 pound, 10-pound box, but nobody goes from the start of the row to the end of the row.
Right, they're doubling back, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, it must be. So I think maybe the takeaway here is that even if you're not picking right to the end of the row, you just need to mark that area where you stop and then continue walking that same direction.
And keep walking out, yeah. I think if you want to have more than one customer in the row, that's gonna prove, because not everybody's going to respect that 6-foot distance. So it's you that or have like the whole ticket system where, okay, customers 1 through 5 can go on these rows and everybody has to wait their turn. Like they said, a lot of people are used to waiting their turn now, so that should not be an issue. If they only pick a little bit, they can use those little flags and then continue walking out, you know, the row. It's the same thing if you're going to the grocery store and you only need to go down one aisle to get flour. If the direction of the arrow is telling you to keep going around that way, you got to still make the loop. So they should not be doubling back.
Great, thank you. Another question about, this is about the online booking. So if, Katerina, if you're still there, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Somebody asked, will you need to overbook, like maybe 20% or so for people that will book and don't show up for one reason or another?
Look, tried to unmute yourself, Katerina, but your mic is not working still. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Got to get the phone back. You thought you were off the hook.
Do you want to skip to another question, Caitlin, while they're
Yeah, sure. We can double back to that. We have some comments that are people are still going to be weighing their berries. You know, just I think it's important to be really make sure that one person is in charge of that weighing and that it's a separate person that's in charge of the cash handling and sanitizing between every customer, if that's your option. All right, let's see here.
It looks like they're typing us back.
Yeah. Okay. Second here. Bear with me, folks. There's a question, will commercial strawberry pickers be required to wear gloves, or is it okay if they wash hands as well?
Washing your hands is always better than gloves. And if they're going to wear gloves, they still have to treat them like hands. They still have to wash and sanitize. So gloves are not a substitute for hand washing. And that was the same before all this even happened. So.
Another one along the same vein, Elaine, we have several hand wash stations around our fields, but in most cases there's no running water. We use wipes and sanitizer as per Canada Gap. Is that still acceptable?
Yep, I think I answered some of these too. I typed in some answers to them. But
okay, great.
I Yep, they're allowing hand wipes and sanitizers. Make sure those hand wipes are baby wipes and unscented, not the Lysol wipes. They have to be safe for use of hands, and yeah, the sanitizer.
Katerina, we've got you back.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's wrong with the
So
computer, but anyway, sorry.
that's okay. This is new for a lot of us. So the question was, are you planning on overbooking, or how are you managing like people that don't show up once they've booked a slot?
So I have thrown around the fact of charging a small fee for a booking so that people will want that feedback if they cancel and don't show up. It's something you can add through the free online booking. You can actually charge for a spot and then somehow compensate the customer when they get to the field, whether, you know, that money just goes towards what they pick or whatnot. So I have thought about that. But like I said, for this being such a new thing and most of our clientele are elderly and a lot of them are not on social media, by me booking those 30 spots per hour and then leaving like 15 available for drive ups, I think that I'll be able to compensate for the people that don't show up. But people are pretty serious here, especially the morning group, like they do show up. So I think once they get onto the system, it will be okay. But for larger groups or larger populations, I think every farm just kind of has to take their first week as an example of how to move forward. So that booking app is really easy to manipulate and change as you need. You can go in on your phone and change it. It takes just a couple minutes to change things around. So
Great. Thank you very much. Sounds like a wonderful app.
I know, and it's free.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure there will be a lot of people taking advantage of that this year.
I hope
think that's
people do
people's second favorite four-letter word.
free.
Free, yeah. Yeah. We have a comment here from Kim, who's a Canada Gap auditor, and it says those on Canada Gap will require that their cleaning procedures are documented, which is not a change from the regular program. If you've changed your cleaning methods or frequency of cleaning since last year, you must update the SSOP, and your records need to reflect the current frequency, even if that exceeds your Canada Gap requirements. So that's a great note from Kim. Okay, let's see. There's a concern, maybe you can speak to this, Jen. When they sell from the farm gate or market, they take the pulp boxes, and wholesale deliveries are in the pulp boxes, and that's a concern for people.
In reusing them, I guess I don't quite.
Or maybe it's a supply issue, like you're gonna have to have more supply, I guess. If people aren't able to bring their own picking containers, you're gonna have to have more supply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as was addressed by Katharina, then you just might have to mark up your price to reflect the fact that you're buying boxes for all of them.
Yeah, that was listed on a concern as a concern.
If we don't answer your questions, I was gonna say, if we don't answer the questions adequately or exactly what you were looking for, then feel free to send a message too.
Yes, please. I think we've answered most things here. So I'm just going to scroll through and double check.
Oh, there's a question there from Jody that came through in the chat, asking if there's a set number of people allowed in the field as long as the 6-foot distance is maintained. There is not a set number of people, but you really have to think about how many you can fit into your own field and almost map it out in advance, how much people would usually pick, your row length, how long they're going to stay in the field. How do you feel about, I'm looking at either Elaine or Lori, if you have any thoughts.
Do they still, I think maybe that's just for enclosed spaces, but I think stores aren't allowed to have any more than if they can't maintain 6 feet, isn't it 50 or 10 still? But maybe for outside fields, I didn't see anything in the UPIC guidelines from the province stating that there was a limited amount of people allowed in the field.
I've read that as long as there's adequate spacing, then there's no number. I mean, if you have that large of acreage and you can comfortably check people through, like back out through your berry shack, if you will, then that's your comfort level.
The only limit they have is the 10 people gathering together. That's the only, so otherwise there's no limit in the field. You just have to maintain that 6 feet distance.
Okay, great. There was a question about handling cash, and we did address that, and Lori answered it well, but I just thought I'd highlight that because I think it'll be a real concern for people, especially in this type of an operation. And Lori's answer here, I'm just going to read it out. It's best practice to use the credit and debit machine if possible, but cash can be taken. Ask for exact change to reduce handling, and after handling cash, ensure to wash hands thoroughly. So that will be in our best practice document as well. But just an important point to highlight. Another one that I think should stand out here, are UPICs allowing the use of inside washrooms due to cleaning regulations or outhouse facilities in the fields? And Lori replied here that the recommendation is limiting washroom use. And if washroom use is permitted, ensure there's a frequent cleaning and disinfection schedule and maintain a log of this cleaning protocol as well. Let's see here. Yeah, eating in the field, it's even in regular times, it's encouraged that nobody eat in the field, but this is an excuse to really enforce it. Let's see. Is the rotation for anything 3 days? So that we were talking about flags specifically with that. So that would be plastic flags. But Elaine, maybe you can comment on other materials.
Depending on paper, I guess it's could be as little as a day or 12 hours, depending on the material. Plastic, I think they say 2 days. Metal is 3. I think just throw them in a pile and leave them for a couple days, and then you can put them back in rotation. You can sanitize them, but I don't know if anybody really wants to soak a bunch of flags in sanitizer. And I mean, flags are pretty cheap, you know, and you don't have to use flags. I mean, you can use whatever you want. You can use a rock that's painted or whatever to mark a spot, and somebody has to go gather up the rocks. It's, you know, or a board or wood, and, you know. Yeah. So just think
what about wooden picking trays?
So wooden picking trays that are wood you can't sanitize and clean anyways. But if you're a commercial picker, putting them into wooden boxes, into wooden trays, they're going to get put in, you know, on a cart and away anyways. If you're going to, you can spray them with sanitizer, but then you got to let them dry because you don't want them to mold. And I like the cardboard flat where they touched it, they just take it and go, you know.
Yeah, and Lori noted here that cardboard is 24 hours.
Yeah, I think it's 12 to 24, I think.
12 to 24, yeah. Okay. So that's definitely.
I'd have to look that up. I mean, that's definitely, if that's one of the questions, we could definitely put that in the FAQ.
Yeah,
and get that's all that information is constantly changing. I mean, the chances of it being, you know, through touch services is probably less than people being close together. I get worried more of the people that aren't 6 feet apart, or people that show up and have been working up on a different province and come across and decide to pick. I mean, you don't want anybody from another province that hasn't self-isolated either. So that's something we didn't talk about, but that's still a rule in the province. So if you come from away, you got to self-isolate for 14 days and not be out and about. So Yeah, that's just something to think about.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've covered most things. As I said, if I've missed any questions, I'll make sure that we've noted them down. And feel free to contact us. I'll share my screen again. I've got some contact information for us. So yeah, this is where you can find some more great information specifically related to COVID-19. The Federation of Agriculture and Farm Safety Nova Scotia have tons of information. There's information from the department and as well as how Perennia is working during COVID-19. You can also find our contact information on our website if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask us. I know Lori's available. Elaine is happy to take emails about these issues, as it's definitely a different time for everyone. And visit the Horticulture Nova Scotia website for information from there. I think that's all we have, guys. Does anybody else have anything to add just to wrap up? No? Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Lori and Marlene and the people that we had from the department, as well as Katerina and Matt. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Jen and Sarah. And we hope this was helpful for everyone. So hope you all have a great day and a successful U-Pick and farm stand season. Thanks.